what's up? So let's go over starting a project. Now, we're not going to write too much in here because the whole point of this is to get you started on your assignment, but not to like do the whole thing for you, obviously. But we just want to get this video up so you have like a dedicated video for like how to actually start a project. um, just in case there's like parts of it that you might forget. But you do have to sort of start to memorize this procedure, right? It's not hard, I mean, but I get it that sometimes there might be parts of it that you might forget, or you might kind of see, like sometimes even when people start their project, I've noticed in the past that like they might do it in such a way where their files are kind of scattered all over the place. They'll have, like, say they start the project in their documents folder, and their index.html is just, in the documents folder, and it's linking to files that are somewhere else on their computer, and everything is kind of all over the place. Like, that's what you don't want to do, right? So you want to always follow this and do it in a way where everything is going to be in the same place. So first off, when you start a project, you always want to make a new folder. And in this case, it's assignment 2, because this is the second assignment that we're working on. And you're going to drag and drop this onto VS Code. This is basically what we've been doing. Like every time we do a code along, it's the same procedure, right? So you have your assignment 2 folder. And with this, we can start now putting whatever we need in there. So off of the bat, you want to put a new folder and name it CSS. And then you want to make another folder called IMG. And you will always put any and all images that are going to go into this project or whatever you're working on. But in this case, assignment 2, all of the images go in there, and the CSS goes in there. And then we're going to make the index.html. So that's the first part. So now when you are ready to hand in your assignment, all you got to do is zip. I mean, once it's all finished, obviously, you're going to zip the assignment 2 folder, and this is what you would hand in for when you hand it in on Blackboard. Okay, so from here, we can start writing the first page. Now, I'm going to leave a lot of this out because, again, I don't want to be doing your work for you. I don't want to take all of the challenge away from the assignment. But we'll get to a point where we can have like a basic boilerplate on here, and then maybe write a little bit of CSS for it. So, and another thing too is remember to follow the direction, follow this boilerplate here when you write your HTML. because yeah, like you want all of this to be written properly. You have to put all this stuff. And again, remember, only ever put, metadata and linking to other files and stuff like that in the head. You never put any content or structure inside of the head. So in this case, it's going to be some restaurant, right? Because that's what the assignment is. So, there we go. Um, Description. And this would be the description for the restaurant in this case. So it'd say um, something like, I don't know, you can, whatever. Something like that, right? Something you would see on a restaurant. I forgot to put in the character set. And the English. And then the link to the CSS file. Whoops. And we don't have a CSS file in there yet. We can make one before we put this link there. So style.css. So now it'll show link href css / style.css. And relative, it's a style sheet, then type. There. And that's all we need in there for now. Again, there are more things we will be putting in here later on as we learn more stuff. But for now, that's all good. And then we can start inside of the body. So all I'm really going to put in here is probably just a basic boilerplate, because again, you have to build this how you want, and you might not want to build it how I'm about to do this, right? Like, you might want the nav over the header, or the header over the nav. You might not want it to be full width, or maybe you do want it full width. You might want a full-size header. You might not. I don't know, right? Like, you have to build this for you. And if if I build too much of it, then you're gonna kind of just use what I give you and then be like, here's my assignment, which is not what we want to do. So basic boilerplate. Um, I'll just do header, nav, main, content, and footer. Just so that they're, keep it simple. You could have like a second main content section, or like a reserve now section, right? Where like say in here you just have a button, or maybe you have like a write up or something that says like, click below to reserve a table, and then you have a button, you know, and then they would click on the button and it would bring them to another page where they can reserve a table type of thing. Like all those are different things you could do, but it depends on what you want to build. All right. So anyway, the whole point of this is more so to get you started. So, um, so yeah, just to reiterate, make sure that your structure, because this is when we mark the assignment and we're like, the structure is not good or it needs more structure or whatever. Like, what we're talking about is the structure of, well, it's a sort of twofold statement. First off, you want to make sure that the structure of your page is done just like how I just did it, right? You want to make sure that there's a declaration. You want to make sure that you have the opening HTML tag. And the closing HTML tag, you want to make sure is at the bottom of the page. It's the last tag. Then you want to make sure that the head tag is opened and closed, and within it is only this type of stuff, only metadata and links and a title, right? And again, just like how we practice when we do our practicing and we practice using HTML, or sorry, CSS in style tags, you do not want to have this in your finished product. You don't want to have any style tags anywhere on your page in the finished product. All of your CSS is going to be in the CSS file, all right? So don't have style tags in your finished product. It's fine if you prototype with it, that's fine. But once you're done, once you're like, hey, this is done and it's ready to be handed in, you have to move all of the CSS into its own file. And then you want to make sure that you have opening and closing body tags with all of your structure, done similar to this. Like, you want to have all the divs for the different sections of the bigger parts of the page, the header, the navigation bar, the main content, footer. Even if you have multiple main sections, or maybe you have two different footers, like maybe you have the top footer part and the bottom footer part. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be very similar to this, right? And then you're going to have the stuff inside, right? Like, or maybe just to go a little bit more in depth, maybe we have maybe we have something like this with something like that. And then you're going to have obviously your nav with the OL, the list items, and so on, and then the stuff inside of the main content. That's what we mean when we talk about structure. Remember, HTML is you're building your the HTML is like the frame of a building. Remember that when we first started learning, and you want the frame to be done properly, and you want your indents to be done properly, right? Notice how these are not like back here with this kind of just floating somewhere in there or whatever. No. All of the indents are done properly. So you can tell that this is an item inside of this item, and the header is inside of this. All right? You could kind of space this out if you wanted it to maybe be a little bit easier on the eyes if you want. That's fine. But you want to make sure your indents are done uniformly and properly. It's what we've been doing in all of our practices. Okay, so let's just kind of make this look like it's at least something that we can look at. Just so we can see. Oh, and you know what I forgot to do? Well, we wouldn't have to do what I forgot to do. If this was going to be a full width page, then this would be fine how it is. But if we don't want to make it a full width page, we would have to wrap all of the highlighted stuff here in a wrapper. So what we could do is, again, highlight all of this, all the stuff that's inside of the body. Note, all the stuff in the body. We could cut it and then write a div with a class of wrapper or container, right? And then paste all of that stuff that we just cut back into the wrapper. So we're just adding an extra layer, right? An extra layer of structure here, which is the wrapper. And then all of this stuff is inside of the wrapper. But this is, again, what we're talking about. We're talking about structure. You have to build this up. Wrapper is another part of structure here, in this case. Right, so HTML, whoops, not .html, HTML. There isn't really much we need to do. We could change the font. Just get rid of that Times New Roman. The body, we could zero out the margin. Like I showed you before many times, the margin, the body has margin on it, default margin. And if you want to make a full width site, you might want to get rid of that, right? There's no, well, there's H1. You could put your type. You're also going to have like tables, for example, on the menu and drinks page or pages. Those two pages are going to have tables on them, right? So you might want to do table down here, and then do table, the table datas and table headings, right? You might want to do those all up here. You don't have to. You could give all those tables classes and then do it that way if you want to do it that way, right? But you could set a default for a table and then tell it what you want. So like H1, let me say like font size Okay. So the table, maybe you tell it border 1 pixel solid black. And maybe you tell the table data or the table headings and table data is the same thing. In which case, I mean, if we were gonna just put border on all of those, we could just do that like this. And we wouldn't need to do that because this would cover the border. And then you could say if you want to collapse the border, you could do this. Then you can say we could go into these parts here. So the dot wrapper, this is where you're going to be able to decide if you want a full width page or if you don't, right? So let's do the wrapper, the header. All we're going to do is give these heights and maybe borders so that we can see. We're just going to kind of make a blank template kind of thing. So let's say the wrapper, we make it 7 or width 75%, and we give it a border of 1 pixel solid like that. We would also have to give it, in this case, because there's nothing inside of it, we have to give all of these things a height because there's no content in there. Well, there's this, but watch, if I open this up in the browser, all we're gonna see is this box because there needs to be more stuff in there. Like if I go and write that, for example, it's gonna see how it gets longer, right? So the width of this is only going to be as long as the content in it, or unless we tell it to be a certain height, right? If I say height, you know, 90 VH, then it'll be that height, right? You're just going to have to remember to take this out, you know, once you're, you know, doing this for real. And I'm going to tell it to margin, let's see, $100 pixels auto, just to push it down and put it in the middle. Maybe 100 is too much. Okay, there. So we're just gonna keep building this up, and I'm gonna show you the different ways you can go about doing this. So the header, we're gonna make it height, let's say 700 pixels, border, bottom, So there's our header. And I should make these borders a little bit thicker so you can kind of see them better. There. So let's say there's our header, and then the nav is the next thing, right? Oh, we would have to do the header box. We'll do that as well. So let's say the header box now is width 500 pixels, height 300 pixels, and we'll give it the same border so you can see it. And then we're going to move it. See, there's the header box. Let's move it though. So let's say position relative. See, like we could say position absolute, but then we would have to make the header a position as well. And then move it around within inside of that, which is fine. But this will work fine too. Let's see if that is what I want. Yeah, move it about that, and then move it from the left. We can move it down a little bit more. Like that. Right? So there's the header box. And then the nav, let's say height. Again, 80 pixels usually does the trick with that. And so there's our nav bar. Down here would be the main content. Like that. So the main content is down here. And then the footer. So remember, you're going to have to do the nav and the nav OL or UL. Then the nav OL or UL LI. And then the nav OL or UL LIA, like we've been doing. Header box nav dot name. You're probably gonna want to have some padding on the name, and then that would probably be about it for that. And then the dot footer. So let's say you have a height of 100 pixels. So the main content moves because of the padding that we just put in there. This would be border top. And there's the footer. Now, again, remember, the wrapper has height on it. So if I change this to like 2000 pixels, then all of this is just going to get, longer, right? But you have to remember to take this out. When you put your content in there, you should not have that at all in there, the wrapper height. So remember to take the height out of the wrapper. Now, okay, so this now is like a basic sort of blank starting point where you could start. So remember, this is an example here of like maybe you don't want a full width type of page, right? Whoops. This one. So yeah, maybe you don't want a full width page and you want it to be, let me put this there at the bottom. Actually, let me pop it out instead. Okay. So maybe you want the wrapper instead to be like a full width type of thing, right? I just took out the width and the margin, pushing it down. So if you wanted a full width type of presentation instead, you could also do that, right? Where there's no, or back to how I had it. You could change this to be more narrow, right? Or however you want it. Right? So you can play around with it and get it how you want, but at least you have a starting point. Right? And that is how you're going to start this project. So from there, actually before, and one thing you can do before you even start all of this is you can draw out like a wireframe on a piece of paper and then like kind of figure out how you want it to look, right? You can do that as well. And depending on the type of restaurant and the type of content and so on, you're going to, formulate it however you want to formulate it. So now, when you are when you get to the point where you're going to make the other pages, all you're going to do is you're going to go like the first page you're going to have all done, right? Like you're going to have all the navigation done in there and the footer stuff in there, and you're going to have all the main content in here. And that is when you should start generating the new pages. So when the index, that HTML page is fully finished, that's when you want to start, like, when I mean fully finished and polished, right? All of the formatting is done properly. You've double checked the formatting. You've double checked the indents. All of the navigation is done and written properly and linked properly. Um, everything is done. That's when you're going to start saying, okay, now you can build, you can start making the other pages, right? Um, Menu.html, drinks.html, contact us.html, right? Menu.html, contact.html. So now you can generate those 4 pages and simply copy everything over and paste it into the next pages. And then all you're going to have to do is change the stuff that's in the main content, right? So now in the menu, for example, you're going to say menu, then you're going to have a table, and inside of the table you're going to have the menu and the items that are going to be on the menu, right? So that is pretty much that. And all the images again are going to go in your image folder. And that's what your assignment's going to look like, right? Then when you're done, you're just going to zip that whole folder. Where is it? You're just going to zip the whole assignment to a folder, and now it's going to have all the stuff in there, and everything is neat and tidy, right? You're just going to zip this, and then you're going to hand in the zip file in Blackboard. And that's pretty much it. So that should get you started. And we'll see what you can build on top of that. All right. So we will stop it there, and I'll see you in the next one.